Alright, I wanted to make this quick video about what structure blocks are and how to use them. So first things first, the way you obtain them is by running the following command: give yourself as Minecraft structure block, and you will get one of those. So yeah, that's what that is. So what a structure block is, as the name implies, is it is a block that is supposed to save and load structures. So the way you do that is by a couple of ways. So number one, you can do manual saving, or what I like to call manual saving. So let's call this struct1. Okay, so first things first, after you decide on a name for your soon-to-be structure, the next thing you'll notice is relative position. And so what this is the position, or where the lower left, or the, let's call it the small corner, the minor corner. So you'll notice this is the x-axis, the z-axis, and the y-axis. So if you look in the F3 screen, I'm facing towards positive X, positive Z, and positive Y is up, but it won't tell you that. So relative position just tells you where the block of the corner, the minor corner, is the block that has the smallest X, Y, and Z coordinates. So this block right here. So for us, that's going to be, well, let's move this over actually. And boop. And so this is going to be 3 blocks in the Z direction and nowhere else. So no change in the X, no change in the Y. It is 3 blocks away in the Z. So now the structure block's minor corner is right here. And now we can determine how big it is along the X, Z, and Y direction. So for us, this is 5 or 6 blocks wide in the X direction. It is 6 blocks tall in the Y direction and 6 blocks long in the Z direction. And now you'll see once I put those values in, it will select a box that encompasses this structure that I've made right here. And yeah, other options real quick: show invisible blocks. I'll get to that in a moment. Detect, I'll also get to in a moment. Include entities, self-explanatory. If you have things like armor stands in the stands in the mix, then those will be saved as well. Just to demonstrate, we'll include entities and we will hit save. So now this has been saved as struct1 within this world. The structures only work per world. If you want it to work in other worlds, you have to copy them. But that's beyond the scope of this little rundown right here. Next up, I will go over how to avoid the pain of sort of like, let's say you didn't want, let's say you had like a gigantic mansion and you're like, oh, I don't want to bother, you know, counting out how far it is, whatever, blah, 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 right? So what you could do, or oops, let's put that back. So what you could do is instead use something called the corner block. So notice I put so structure blocks have a few modes. The first one is data. You can ignore that. Save is what I was just using. Load we'll get to in a minute. And corner is what we're interested in, which will allow us to sort of just place down structure blocks and define our area this way. So if I wanted to select the same area that I did before, if I want to select this structure again, I'll put my first one down here, and the second one will go right, gotta line this up. I messed it up, but whatever. So yeah, then the second block would go right here, and we'll switch it to corner mode and call it struct1. Boom. And now instead of, so let's say we break this, right? Now let's say we want to save this structure again. So we just go to save, we name it struct1, and instead of having to figure out all of the values for ourselves, we'll just hit detect, and boom. there we go. It's selected the structure for us. Notice that these corner blocks are about 1 block out in each direction from the actual corner, so the structure won't include this corner block that we've used. All right, now we're going to get into loading up these, or how to use the structure block to get our structure back. So first things first, if you just want to plop it back into existence, we'll just hit load. Say we want to load up struct 1 right here, and then we'll just hit load without changing anything. Obviously, this is where it's going to be. It shows you a little preview of it. And if you don't like where it is, you can go ahead and, let's say, move it up 1 or 2. Move it down if you want. Move it along the X, along the Z, whatever you want. But once you've got it in the right place, you can just hit on if you want to include entities and hit load. And your structure comes flooding back into existence. Now, what I did want to point out is that if you are... Okay, so there's a few other things to do with loading here. So you'll notice that the first things first is relative position. I already showed you that. Structure integrity, I'll get to in a second. Include entities is self-explanatory. And then there is the rotation ability. So if I hit 90, you'll notice that it rotates it by 90 degrees. And we'll just load that in to demonstrate. We'll move a little bit further along here. This is the mirror mode. I'll get to that in a second. 180 does exactly what you expect. Turns it 180 degrees clockwise. Yep, that is clockwise. And of course, we'll just do 270 to be thorough. I did not press load. Remember, you'll need to hit load when you do these things. But yep, there you go. Another thing you can do is mirroring. So here's our original structure, just to remind you of what's going on here. So if we place down this load block again, here are the settings, we can go ahead and flip it. And what this will do is if we go ahead and load it, at first glance it might look like we've actually turned it, but what we've actually done is mirrored it along the x-axis. So you notice this is the x-axis, nothing's changed, but now everything in the positive z has been moved to the negative z, and if we had stuff in the negative z, it'd be, you know, you get the idea. So flipped that way, mirrored as if there was a mirror along the x-axis. And now the next one is obviously what happens if you flip it along the z-axis, I believe. And yep, there you go, flipped along the z-axis. And the last one, I believe, is... Well, actually, no, that's it. So you can't flip it upside down, unfortunately. That's just not a thing. I imagine that's because it can include entities. But yes, you can flip things along the x-axis and the z-axis. Another thing to note is that if we have some blocks in the middle of our little structure as we load it, whoops. Let's go ahead and rotate it 90. So you notice when we load, it completely removes the blocks that were within the structure. All right, we had a pillar of blocks right there. So if we want to avoid that, we can use something called the structure void. So let's go back to our source structure right here, and we'll say, oops, put down these little structure voids right here. And they can be hard to see, so what I'm going to do is come over here and hit show invisible blocks. Now you'll see there's a whole bunch of blue, which represents the air. So these structure blocks will copy over air, overriding anything within them. But as long as we have these little structure voids, they will essentially, or let's just demonstrate. So now if we load up this structure again, putting down some blocks here and some blocks here. So you remember our structure voids were in this column right here. So if we go ahead and first we have to go back and hit save. Save. There we go. To, you know, save the structure. Self-explanatory. And now if we hit load, the structure voids save these blocks, but not these blocks. So you can use structure voids to ensure that existing blocks are not overwritten, because by default they will be by any air blocks that you have. And finally, interesting thing you can do with structure blocks is something called, or structure integrity. So if we go ahead and look at all these blocks, actually we'll turn that off. So you'll notice when we go to load something up right here, and I'm getting a little bit of, if we go to load something up right here, structure integrity, what does it mean? So 1.0 means perfect structure integrity, but if we change this to something like 0.5, what this tells the structure block is I'd like there to be a half chance of a block not being loaded. So if we go ahead and do that, you'll notice about half the blocks are missing. There's also something called the seed. If you don't mess with it, it'll be random every time. Oh, I forgot to change the structure integrity. Let's do that real quick. You'll notice if we load it in now, there's a slightly different break pattern. Different blocks are missing. But we can also use this to set a seed. So if we go ahead, let's just say 0.7 this time, and seed of 1. Go ahead and hit load. You'll notice that these two blocks are missing, the quartz block is missing, and there's that pattern right there. If we copy that, put it down, and load up again, you'll notice the exact same breaking pattern happens. And you'll notice it didn't happen with these where we didn't set the seed. So different seeds obviously have different breaking patterns. If we go ahead and change the seed to something like, I don't know, 2, load, there's a different breaking pattern. And that's basically all you really need to know with structure blocks. The integrity thing may or may not be useful if you want to make ruins for map makers. Oh, thing to note with structure blocks is they can also be activated with redstone. So if we go ahead and just put a redstone block next to it, that'll activate it. But yeah, that's about all there is with structure blocks. You can, I guess, clone a structure block if you want, and then activate it with redstone to have structures sort of appear in thin air. Woo! But yeah, that's about it. Thank you for watching and sticking with me as I sort of rambled my way through this tutorial. Hopefully you found this useful. If you would like any questions of yours answered, feel free to leave them in the comments. I will try and answer them as you ask them. That's about it. Be sure to check out my other stuff here on this channel. Thanks so much for watching. I will see you all later. Bye-bye.